From Better Me, and today I want to talk about the difference between private versus public schools. And this is just an account from my own life with my kids, the things that I found. So when I'm looking for a school, the first thing I'm looking for is something that's progressive. The first thing I'm looking for is something that says, my kid's really going to learn a ton at this school. My kid's not going to be sitting behind a desk and just kind of regurgitating the same or similar content. They're actually going to be taking charge of their own learning, and they're going to be running with it. And they're going to be doing amazing things. That's what I look for. I look for the biggest value add when it comes to my kids' education. I look for something new, and I look for something different. Now, I'm a product of the system. I'm a product of public school education. I don't think public school is terrible, but now that I've seen both sides of it, there's definitely something to be said about private school education versus public school education, because I do think there are a lot more opportunities for kids to learn and to grow potentially in a private school setting, because there are a lot more dynamic things that these kids can do in the private school setting. So just the other day, I was watching a recording of my younger son in the private school setting, and he is sitting around the table and they're giving thanks for the food they're about to eat at lunchtime. He is 5 years old and he starts signing everything that they're saying about giving thanks at this lunch table. And I was blown away that my son is 5 years old and he's learning sign language. It's just an amazing thing. It's very, very dynamic. It's a lot different because they're doing things and they're being stretched outside of their comfort zone. Normally that wouldn't happen in a public school setting. And again, I'm not saying public is a bad thing. I'm saying that from my experience, I find that a private school setting is just a lot more dynamic. And I think for us, we had to do a lot of searching and understanding what is the best public school for us. How do we choose which is the best private school for our kids to go into? And that takes some work. But it all depends on what your family's value sets are. What are your values? What are your beliefs? How do you want your children to grow up and be educated? And so our values and our beliefs were, we wanted to find the most opportunity, the most value add for our kids. How are our kids going to grow the most? And so we found this private school, and it's been amazing because, again, the kids are able to kind of take control of their own learning and guide their own learning. There are guides at the school to be able to help them through the process, but for the most part, they are able to self-guide their own learning process. And so this has been transformative. We've seen all of our kids elevate to a whole nother level of themselves. They've literally just come out of themselves because they've been a part of this program that has actually shown them that there is more to them than they think, that they are capable of more than they think when they're stretched beyond their limits. And that's sometimes what these programs do, is it stretches kids almost beyond their limits so they can see what they're actually truly capable of. So I think there's a lot more opportunity in that respect. I think there's a lot more opportunity where the school is able to take a lot of the learning and a lot of the lesson planning, a lot more dynamic as far as how the students can choose to learn a particular subject. Two of our kids were learning multiple languages, which is amazing. So German, French, Spanish. My little guy is learning a language, which is incredible. Not only are they learning the languages, but they're teaching them. And so, again, coming from the public school setting, which is not at all a terrible thing, it just wasn't as dynamic. And so when we sat down, like I said, we wanted to choose something that we thought was going to be the biggest value add for our kids. We wanted to choose something that we knew was dynamic and we knew would challenge them to step out of their comfort zone and to be able to really flip their mindset from that fixed mindset to that growth mindset. And so they've done that. So now they live life in a growth mindset. A lot of times they slip back into it, but then they kind of come right back out. So the private school setting has been able to do that for them. It's been able to help them go from that fixed mindset right into that growth mindset. They can start to solve challenges a lot better. They can start to look at things in a different way. Like, how can I do this instead of I can't do this? It's been truly transformative. And so I would just say, if you're looking at switching opportunities from maybe a public school or private school, or maybe you've never thought about going to a private school before, I would say, really, what is your outcome? Like, what do you want for your child? Do you want the best education possible? How does that child learn? maybe that child learns better in a private school versus a public school, or maybe that child learns better in the public school versus the private. And that's something that you guys might have to try out and experiment with a little bit. But ultimately, our experience has been really good with the private school setting. It's really stretched our kids above what they thought they could actually do, because it's really allowing them to fail, and allowing them to fail in such a way that they can get up and they can keep going and they can do it better. And so that's what we learned through our experience. I hope that helps. If any of you guys are looking at a private school versus a public school, definitely check them out. Definitely weigh the pros and cons. I can say that a private school is not for every child. A private school is not for every child. Just as a public school isn't for every child. Like, if you feel like your child isn't learning at the public school, maybe what they need is more of a private school setting. Maybe they need something that's self-directed. But keep in mind too, if they are the type that are not good with keeping on task, then having a self-guided learning experience may not be the one for them. But again, if you guys are looking into it, definitely experiment with it, definitely weigh the pros and cons, and definitely talk it out with your kids, and maybe allow them to have a voice in the process as well. So I hope that helped, guys. If you have any questions, please comment on the bottom. If you want to reach out to me, it's info@5pillarfinancial.com, info@5pillarfinancial.com. Like the channel, guys, subscribe, and until then, I'll see you in the next video.